I'm just sitting on my front steps, and I thought I'd give you a garden tour. We played cornhole this morning. George and I were the winners. So that was kind of fun. Some days you have those days and it just zooms through that hole. And other days, it's not so much. But it was fun, and there's like 10 of us that played this morning, and so it was good times. But let's walk around the garden. Now, I am going to plant some amaryllises today, and I'm actually finally doing my African violets. But the African violets I'll do a separate video. I have amaryllis, those ones that we started earlier, and the flowers are starting to open on one of them. So I'll show you that too. So the amaryllis is starting to open on this one. It looks like there's going to be 4. The other one I don't think is going to be one. I think it's going to be 4 flowers. So this is the first one that just opened this morning. And see that pollen in there? After the 4th one gets open, I'm going to cut those pollens off and save them, because this amaryllis over here is a different type, and I'm going to cross-pollinate them, and I'll show you when I do that. But they're very beautiful. Oh, they're easily 2 feet tall, probably a little bit more than 2 feet. But they're a beautiful winter flower. So let's walk around the garden. This is one of my tomatoes that actually has tomatoes on it. This is called a chocolate sprinkled tomato and has some lettuce around it. And it sits in between these 2 little onion patches. And most of these onions are short day onions, and they are called Texas Legend. And they get a lot more sun than the Walla Wallas that are in the actual garden. But I have some squash in there, and actually on the corners I have small tomatoes that I grew from seed, so we'll see how big they get in the next 4 months. And here's just one of my little flower beds, and I made stepping stones for those, but they have geraniums and cacti and succulents and different flowers. It's just a combination. It only gets watered when I hand water it. It's not hooked up to a system, but surprisingly, the plant in the pot still survived. Now I have 8 of these towers, and I like to put pansies, violets, snapdragons, petunias in them. It just watered on this part on these trees. That's my ponderosa lemon, and I've picked several of them, but they're just huge. Let me put my hand right by there. See, they are huge, and that's not even one of the biggest ones. They have a very thick rind, good tasting lemon. I did have some grasshopper damage that when we had gotten down here, it wasn't the birds because we had covered it, and it was grasshoppers that had gotten in there. But there's one of the other towers. But I just love that you can have so many different colors and color combinations in one tower. Now, these ones are fine, but there were some ones that I'm going to move because it was too hot. Now, this is my main garden, and these brassicas along here were what I planted when we first came down. I think I planted them end of October through November 4th. And then this part is that I planted later. It's got bok choy. It's got a little bee that I got from a friend of mine. Zucchinis and onions, different kinds of cabbages. There's a lot of different plants in there. So these brassicas, these cabbages, the red and the regular cabbage, are much smaller than the other brassicas, the cauliflowers, broccolis, because they were planted. I think I've had these in the ground 2.5, 3 weeks now. So they have had much cooler nights. Now I have peppers and celery and different things in cans to kind of protect it. Though the celery that's out is probably, I think, grew better. Lots of salads. I like to add petunias, and all the tomatoes have a bag over top of them. The ones in the corner are larger because they get more sun during the day. And Chinese cabbage. I have some pole beans and some cucumbers that are going to go up that. I'm going to have a squash that goes up that ladder. There's peas to go up those back poles that are helping with the support of the ladders, but lots of little cabbages. So I won't have everything done at the same time, and that's always important. But these little squashes, I have tried, and I don't know what it is with that soil right there. They start to grow, and then they die back. There's another picture of the zucchinis, but I like to line things with petunias in different flowers. Those are some green onions along there. And you can see my broccolis are just starting to make broccolis. And so I'm excited about that. But don't forget to use all those leaves also. You can chop them up, freeze them. There's some tomatoes I did from seed that are in a big can. But use all those brassica leaves, not just the actual broccoli or the cauliflower. Use everything. You can cut up the stalks, everything. And don't waste anything in your garden. But I have about 4 months that I can still have my garden, so it will just continually to grow. My salads, I can just keep nipping them off and have lots of salad. And if it looks like those plants are in their journey, I will just plant some more in there. And there's some Walla Wallas along there, but they don't get as much sun, so they're not as far along. But these Chinese cabbages are just doing spectacular. And use the outside leaves. These 3 tomatoes are my largest tomatoes, but they get the most sun, and they're very protected right there. And they really like it. I like to add lettuce in different spots. So these ones are right by some broccolis. I have some over by some of the cauliflowers. And if you look down into some of these leaves, these brassicas are Brussels sprouts. And if I can get the camera down there, just tiny, tiny baby Brussels sprouts. So they should have enough time to get big before we go back to Wyoming and I start all over again. But I have put tomatoes and different plants in every little nook and cranny I can find in my gardens, because I want to use up all the space possible. But it is really coming along for being less than 2 months old and being winter. Pumpkin patch. That's one of my really large giant pumpkins. And I really need the temperatures to be over 50 at night, and then they'll really start to grow. I planted a few more flowers along one of the flower beds. I just love pansies, I tell you. And this eggplant, you know, I always said I wasn't planting more eggplants, but I planted this last year and it survived the heat of Arizona. It is humongous, and the flowers are just starting to open up. There's some on the other side that are all the way open. And there, I stuck another little tomato plant in there because I can. But there's lots of roses. I'm going to trim back some of the roses, kind of shape their bushes a little bit. But I have pink roses, and we have some great big red roses and some iceberg white roses. But they have just been blooming continuously, and I just keep deadheading them back. And there's the popcorn bush. It's about 8 feet tall now. It's just continually to grow, which is totally awesome. My canna lilies are a little bit spent. I'm just going to trim them back a little bit. Make this ball with the seed heads inside there. I haven't ever opened one up because I haven't propagated it like that. But I'm going to trim those off, get them to stimulate them to grow some more again. But they're just a perennial down here. The 2 trees that I did not plant, they're about 14 feet tall now. They weren't here when we left last spring, and they are here now. This is a mother of millions. Now this mother of millions, along those edges of every leaf, will make little babies. So you literally can have millions of plants. Oh, look at this. It reminds me of Wyoming. A weed in Wyoming. Let's pull that out of there. Crazy. But the side garden is growing well. This is a bottle brush. It'll become a big bush, and it makes these bright red flowers. Mine are red. There's other colors. And it looks like a bottle brush. They're really interesting. So here's banana trees. And let's go see how those bananas are doing. I covered them with a mesh bag. Not that we really have any bugs that would bother the bananas, but I didn't want the birds bothering them either. And they are getting bigger. The artichokes, these are plants from last year, and they started up when we first came. They were just little babies, and there's clumps of 3 and 4. I have 3 different areas of plants of artichokes, and so they're growing good. And there's lots of succulents and cacti in this. That grass right there is lemongrass. But look at my fig. It was growing really well, and one day I came out and all the leaves were dying. The figs fell off. I'm not really sure. I don't know if there was a drift of chemical or pesticide that maybe hit it. It does have a few leaf buds, but I'm going to have to do some research on what the deal is. And it is winter in Arizona, and then maybe this type, that's just what it's going to do. But I'm going to make some mats out of this lemongrass. A friend of mine makes baskets out of them. These are hollyhocks that came up from last year from the seeds, and we got cannas in our bird of paradise, and it's a fun little side garden. And here's a look at my garden from a different perspective. So that's kind of fun too. And those brassicas that I planted end of October and the first week in November are just doing fabulous. Those are all broccolis and cauliflowers. It's interesting. I'm going in and out of the bananas. Just a second, sorry. The leaves are big. It's interesting that just like 2 weeks difference makes on how far the vegetables are. Well, that was a quick garden tour. Now I have to paint. So I'm going to throw this video together, put it up so you can see it. And I have paintings because I'm in 2 art shows, one in February and one in March. And I have a lot of painting to do. So everybody have a great day. Hope you enjoyed the garden tour. Stay warm and stay safe. See you next time.